Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our discussion today. We're going to get started in just a minute. I'm going to give it a minute to allow our participants to join into the webinar. It can take a second to do that. Thank you for joining us. We're looking forward to our discussion this morning. Welcome to our discussion this morning. We're going to get started here in just a minute. Okay, and thank you to everyone for joining us this morning. I'm Kate Shanks. I'm Vice President of Public Affairs for the Kentucky Chamber of Commerce. We're really excited to have this conversation. We think it's an important discussion to have, an important part of our Restart Kentucky webinar series that we've been offering since this past April. Today we are talking about broadband and technology and the role it has played in the pandemic that we're all dealing with, as well as the impact of the pandemic on broadband and technology. We started this initiative back in April as a way to keep Kentuckians, to keep businesses informed as the pandemic was developing, as well as to talk about how we will continue to focus on recovery, what we need to do to get back to our pre-pandemic state. And so we've had a lot of really great conversations over the past couple of months and discussing what needs to happen in Kentucky, important policies that we need to pass, and even in some cases what we've learned and what some of the silver linings may have been from enduring this difficult crisis in Kentucky. I do want to thank our sponsor in this endeavor, the Kentucky Community and Technical College System. They've been a wonderful partner as we've worked through these issues. They're a great education and workforce partner, but there's just so many different areas of topics that we work on where we can work with them as a strong partner. So we appreciate their support throughout this entire process and throughout this entire program. We will be recording this webinar today, so if you have to step away or if there's something you want to revisit in the conversation, you will be able to access the webinar on our Restart Kentucky website. We also will have a chat feature available for you. You can chat with panelists, and I'll be monitoring that. So if we get some questions and some interesting discussions that we want to work into the end of the conversation, please feel free to submit questions through the chat box. I do want to remind everybody that you can find quite a bit of information on our Restart Kentucky website. If you go to kychamber.com, you can click on the Reopening Kentucky, Restart Kentucky banner at the top of the page, and you will find all sorts of information about return to work requirements, healthy at work requirements, healthy at school requirements, the reopening schedule, changes that sometimes get made to that schedule, as well as all of these webinars, which are recorded and you can watch at a later date. So a lot of really great information you can find there at kychamber.com. So I encourage you to look at our Restart Kentucky website. Well, I do want to welcome our panelists today. We're really excited to have this group with us. They are really kind of our go-to group when we're dealing with broadband and technology issues, and we appreciate their leadership on so many different issues that we work on in Kentucky. Great partners of the Chamber. We have Hollie Spade with us today with AT&T Kentucky. Welcome to Hollie. Jason Keller, he is with Charter Communications and also serves as our Competitiveness Policy Council Chair for a bit longer here at the Chamber. So thank you for your leadership on that. Stephanie Bell is with Windstream. We have Tyler Campbell with us this morning as well. He's Executive Director of the Kentucky Telecom Association. So we have a lot of ground to cover, and I know that Dave Baker is up to the challenge. He is going to be our fearless moderator to keep all of our panelists in check this morning. And so welcome to Dave Baker with WKYT, and enjoy the discussion. I think it'll be a really great discussion. So with that, I will turn it over to you, Dave, and we will get started. Thank you.
Thanks, Kate. Good morning and welcome, everybody. First of all, show of hands, and I can't see them. You can answer in the chat box. How many of you have like a sport coat on and you've got shorts on underneath? It's the new world, right? We've seen all those commercials, and even though I'm primarily a sports guy, this is the way it has been for me since like about March 15th. And all of us are working like this. I'm using the phone as a camera. I've got my iPad with information that I need. I've got my laptop actually on my lap to get questions. And like most of us, we've all just kind of been hit with I've got a daughter who works in the emergency room who's involved in telehealth. I've got twin daughters that are trying to set up routers over UK while they go through this online. And I've got a young son who's really not all that into IT or NTI, non-traditional instruction, but he should be, as a sophomore in high school. So we appreciate you all being here. This is a great panel. If anybody hears me say anything silly or inaccurate, please let me know. But there are just so many questions for all of us now. And Hollie, let me go ahead and start with you. I want to ask this to everybody, but Hollie, I'll start with you. Feels like a long time ago. You know, like I said, I've been out of my office since March 15th. What's it been like for your companies and how you responded early on as students went to that virtual learning and much of the workforce like us began working from home? Hollie?
Thanks, Dave. The first thing I'll say is I think we're all proud of the fact that the network, all of our networks, held up well. We saw increases immediately in March, as much as 400% for things like conferencing, web and video conferencing tools, 400% increase immediately. Wi-Fi calling was up 100%, text was up 40%, just immediate impact for our networks, and we've heard nothing but good things. I think the networks have held up well. The infrastructure has proven to be a strong infrastructure. As far as how AT&T specifically handled this big shift in the world, I really want to address three things. One is the people that work for us, and then also the customers and the community. So like all of the businesses, all the folks that are on here today, we had to adjust for our employees. We have over 2,000 employees in Kentucky. Folks like me immediately were told to go home and work from home. So AT&T really stepped up and looked into keeping its employees safe. We have 214 retail stores, so we had to follow CDC guidelines and immediately adjust to all of that, just like the rest of the businesses that are on here. For our own employees, we extended some paid leave for folks who were either sick or caring for a sick person or had kids at home from school. We also had bonuses that we paid to employees who are on the front lines. We all have network folks who are going out to homes. We're essential employees and they receive bonuses. And we did try to keep some retail stores open because we did have healthcare workers, government employees, and folks that needed help with their technology. So we shrunk our footprint of our retail stores up, but tried to keep one open in a 20-mile radius in the urban areas, a 30-mile radius in the more rural areas. And so just to keep our employees functioning safely was the first thing, just like everybody else. And then for our customers, we took that pledge, the Keep Americans Connected pledge with the FCC, so that we did not terminate service when folks couldn't afford to pay their bills during this time. We also waived late fees, overages, did things that we could do to keep folks connected at a time when they were having difficulty financially and otherwise. So kept public hotspots open. And we also, some people don't realize, Cricket is part of our AT&T family. So for prepaid folks, we had some special offers, we waived some fees, and tried to make those products available to folks who needed them immediately, because a lot of people, that's the only way they connect to the internet is through their cell phone. So we were trying to make folks, give folks ways to connect in a difficult circumstance. So we took all those steps, and then additionally, just to the community, we tried to give back to the community and help where we could help. We have a FirstNet product. We had deployables that we put out there to allow folks to have connectivity at crowded places like ports all over the country, and also hospitals, testing sites, places like that, to provide connectivity for those places. And provided curbside pickup for customers, did things like that. We just tried to reach back out to the community. I know in general, we AT&T at the national level had some big contributions, like $10 million for distance learning fund and $1 million to the Khan Academy. You know, I think all of us were just reaching out any way we could. So it's hard to shrink all that down, but that just gives you some of the things that we were doing.
Absolutely. Jason Keller, how about you?
So a lot of, I would echo a lot of what Holly mentioned. But one of the things that we obviously saw, as Holly mentioned with AT&T, is with our cable networks in just Kentucky, we saw a nearly 13% increase in downstream growth usage, and nearly 14% growth in upstream usage. And that's just in Kentucky. A lot of that is due to streaming video and other things that our customers are using. One of the things that has certainly come out of the pandemic is a need and a drive to deploy broadband to areas where there isn't any today. We currently have now just over 500 construction projects going on across Kentucky, and many of those are expanding service into areas that don't have it. So that is certainly something. I know we'll probably talk a lot more about rural broadband as this discussion moves forward, but that's certainly something that has come into focus for us. At the start of it, I think our executives identified that NTI was going to become a new normal. And that's why we launched a 60-day free offer for our internet service for any family with children and any educators, any households that had an educator living in it. Obviously, a significant number of people took advantage of that. We actually had the highest customer growth of any quarter in our company's history in second quarter of this year, due to the demand for more broadband service in Kentucky and across America. And as part of that is, Holly mentioned their employees. We have about 3,200 employees in Kentucky, and they are spread out from Ashland to Fulton, Northern Kentucky, all the way to the Tennessee line, and in 68 counties in between. So in order to make sure that we are addressing their needs, one of the things that our company put into place was we increased our starting wage to $20 an hour. And that affects a number of employees that we have. And certainly that's something that is going to help us retain and attract good talent, but is also something that is a reflection of some of the stress and strain that all families are feeling as a result of the pandemic and COVID-19. So, those are a couple of the things that have been going on, and I think we'll talk more about rural broadband, but a focus on customers, ensuring they have a strong, reliable, fast internet product, making sure that we're expanding service into areas that don't have it, and then making sure that our employees are well taken care of so that they can take care of our customers. That's been a focus of our company.
Absolutely. Tyler, how about you?
Hey, Dave, thank you. I appreciate the question, appreciate the opportunity to be here. The Kentucky Telecom Association, I tell people all the time, we are the rural broadband providers in Kentucky. We represent a number of small companies. We serve all or part of 45 counties in Kentucky. So more than a third of the counties in Kentucky are actually served by independently owned or cooperative rural broadband providers. So we are the small guys. When we talk about rural broadband, that's something that's near and dear to my heart, because those are the people that, that I represent in Frankfort and in Washington, D.C. The first couple of months of pandemic, I probably would echo the comments from Holly and Jason. A majority of our member companies did take the Keep America Connected pledge. So we did not terminate service for customers during that time due to the inability to pay because of the disruptions with the coronavirus. We waived late fees. We also, a number of our companies worked with local officials, worked with the school systems there to install additional Wi-Fi hotspots. We had a number in our service territories anyway. We did install additional Wi-Fi hotspots in those areas because of the increase in demand. If somebody didn't have access, our folks are community-based providers. We work in our community. These are the folks that we go to church with, we work with. And so it was really important that we continue to invest in our communities. So a majority of our companies did work very closely with their local elected officials, local school superintendents, in order to install additional Wi-Fi hotspots. And to echo the comments of Jason earlier as well, for the first 2 months of the pandemic, as students were transitioning to home, and not only students, but also parents, there's a number of parents that suddenly, were going to have to go and telework so they could actually monitor their children's progress with school. So we took that into account in a number of our service areas. We augmented service calls and prioritized service calls in order to, if there was a troubleshooting issue with students or those individuals that needed to work from home, they went to the top of the list as far as people that we needed to address if there were service calls. So we did those things, to really respond to the immediate needs of our community. Several of our member companies actually increased speeds at no cost. They may have adjusted a plan to increase speeds, but many of our companies increased download and upload speeds at no cost. And then some of those companies actually also, for the first couple of months, if you had a student that was, K through 12 in the home, they either offered a reduced or discounted plan or a free internet service for the first couple of months of the pandemic. So these are all things that happened early on. As Hollie said, again, these are the folks that we go to church with and work with. And so our employees and our customers were a priority. Early on, we worked to secure PPE for our employees. As Hollie said, telecom was deemed an essential service early on. So securing PPE for our employees was a very important thing for us to do, so that as those service calls continued to come in, if we had to interact with people, we were doing so in a safe manner. And so we did do those things early on with our employees too. As I said, we sent several folks home. So we transitioned to a work from home. Our service techs that were still interacting with those in the community, we augmented work schedules early on, so that obviously we were taking into account they may have to work longer days or odd shifts in order to address some of the service calls that we needed. So our companies continue to innovate. I think everybody here, everybody talks about the new normal. This is the new normal as well. We're continuing to innovate. We're implementing policies that impact our employees so that we can address the needs of our communities in a safe and responsible manner.
Absolutely. Stephanie?
Thank you. Well, Windstream is like the rest of the gang. We've been preparing our network for something like this for a while now. And so we put over $153 million into our system over the past couple of years to prepare, to beef it up, in case we did have some problems, and thank goodness we did. We experienced a 50% increase in voice traffic and a 30% increase in data traffic. So those are pretty big numbers, and our system was able to withstand that. So that was good. We increased customers' bandwidth in record time. We had a lot of customers that needed increased speed, so we were able to do that. We offered businesses a free 90-day trial for our Office Suite product. It's a HD conference call system that has built-in security measures. So that was something we wanted to do. We had record numbers of new customers for Windstream. Like the other groups, we did sign the FCC pledge not to terminate customers, and we beefed up our customer service to help those that needed access to broadband, they needed to upgrade their broadband, whatever they needed. We worked with customers to do that, and increasing our install times, which is sometimes difficult to do, but we did do that. Our employees worked from home, and our techs, they were the backbone. They're the backbone of our business, and so we provided them bonuses. They were allowed to work from their house. They had their house as their anchor. They did not come into the office, and so we did some things like that too. One of our biggest challenges, and this is kind of a funny story, was early on getting PPE for our employees, specifically hand sanitizer. And I was able to locate some hand sanitizer, and I put it on my company credit card, and it was like $6,000 of sanitizer to Moonshine University.
I was going to say, you bought it from the distillery, didn't you?
Yes, Moonshine University. So I did get some questions from the corporate office about that. But yeah, so thank you so much. And you know, it's been a good experience for us.
And before the next question, I just want to say thank you to all of you who are out there, not only our panelists, but all the companies and people from companies that have joined us. I've been blessed to work for a great company that has really taken care of its employees, and the Chamber has provided so much guidance and jumped in with both arms. And so for all of you out there, thank you so very much. I'm going to date myself just a little bit. I just passed my 39th year at WKYT, so I am probably the only person on this call that actually had a phone conversation on a party line. When my grandmother lived down in Owsley County and I was over at Georgetown College, I would call her up to see how she was doing, and invariably somebody else would pop on the line wanting to use the phone. So we don't have those things anymore, and we've made progress, but there is still progress to be made. So help us understand where we are in Kentucky today regarding that broadband deployment. And do we have certain parts of the state, and I know it's not limited to rural, but it's rural and urban. I would also point you all out that this past Sunday on the CBS Sunday Morning News, the lead story on that broadcast was about how all over the country there are pockets where people need broadband. And I've gotten stories from friends down in Eastern Kentucky where kids either have to have their parents take them back to the school so they can download their assignments, or they pull into the McDonald's parking lot and they get on the Wi-Fi there. So what about these parts of the states that are lacking? Are there specific metrics that we can look at? And how do we compare to other states? Jason, let me start with you.
Yeah, thanks, Dave. And one of the things that I think we need to keep in mind when we talk about access, and whether it's school kids for NTI, whether it's seniors who are trying to connect, we need to look at the issues that urban and rural communities face and understand sort of the root cause of why we have an access issue. And I'll just start with urban areas. One of the things that you will find in urban areas is that a number of broadband providers offer infrastructure. The infrastructure is already built in cities across Kentucky. And generally speaking, both wireline and wireless companies have expended their capital to provide infrastructure and are competing with one another for customers in those areas. But one of the driving factor that we see in terms of access or lack thereof in urban areas is simply a price issue. And a family may not have the means to afford connecting to the internet. And that's one of the reasons why companies like ours have put together low-cost broadband options like our Spectrum Internet Assist. I know Hollie has, AT&T has AT&T Access, and many other companies have similar products to try to bridge that digital divide in urban areas where there is a broadband line that's running right in front of a home or right to a home. So that is something I think we need to keep in mind. In urban areas, it's not a lack of infrastructure.
Right.
The lack of infrastructure comes into play in rural areas. And yes, we absolutely still have homes in rural areas throughout Kentucky that don't have access. If a home wanted to call up and get service today, they wouldn't be able to get broadband service from any provider because no one has had the ability, because of the exceptional costs that come along with expanding service into rural areas. They've not had the ability to expand service to reach some of those places. And I think there is a lot going on at both the federal and state levels to try to address this. Certainly at the federal level, there are a number of federal grant programs, loan programs, and others that are have been out for a while and are continuing to progress. So that's certainly an issue. The Commonwealth has also taken some steps. Last session, Representative Philip Pratt from Georgetown was sponsored and was able to pass a bill that established a broadband grant program here in Kentucky. That grant program is going to establish a 50-50 match between providers and taxpayer dollars to be invested to expand service in areas where there is none today, where there's truly an unserved home or business. And that's where I think a lot of our policies as we move forward in Kentucky need to be sure that we're focusing. If we're going to invest taxpayer dollars, if we're going to put regulatory changes in place, we need to focus on those areas where there really is no broadband today. And I think House Bill 362 last session was a good start towards that. We're hopeful that the General Assembly in 2021 will move to fund that program. And then we certainly also have some other opportunities that we see as Charter Spectrum that as we're building out into rural areas. I mentioned we currently have more than 500 construction projects ongoing across Kentucky today, with a significant percentage of those occurring in rural areas. One of the things that we're seeing is the ability or lack thereof of being able to attach to pole attachments in a timely, cost-effective, efficient manner. So looking at some of those issues, which can contribute up to nearly a third of the cost of all projects into rural areas, is something that's important for certainly for our company and others like us.
Stephanie?
Yes. Well, the pandemic has certainly highlighted the need for more rural broadband in Kentucky. If you look around at surrounding states, Kentucky is really the only state that does not provide some type of funding mechanism for broadband deployment. And so that's why that broadband fund was so important to us, so that we could stay on the level with surrounding states on economic development and things like that. The broadband is not a luxury anymore. It is considered a utility. You have to have broadband to stay connected with your friends, with your school, to do to live your daily life. And so, at Windstream, we're working with communities. We're actively searching for P3 projects that we can work with communities to deploy more broadband to them, because it is so important. And this pandemic has highlighted that fact.
Hollie, I know it's something, as Jason mentioned earlier, that you all have special projects with as well.
Yeah, as far as the rural connectivity goes, we definitely have improved. I mean, folks are I think a little surprised at the lack of connectivity. It's been big in the news and people are hearing more about it now, but we've actually seen this issue for a while. AT&T's been working on this issue for the last few years. We actually participated in a grant program with the federal government that provided us some funding, because in the end, it is just a difficult economic model. Not enough folks within an area to justify the cost of the infrastructure. So with that FCC funding, AT&T was able to go out. In the last few years, we've implemented and deployed a product called Fixed Wireless. And that Fixed Wireless product allows us to put an antenna on a home, an antenna about the size of a pizza box, and get the wireless internet service through that. By the end of 2020, we will have 83,000 homes that previously were not served that will have availability of that product. We've, in order to do that, just in 2020, put in 30 new cell towers, and going back the last few years, it's over 100. And we're doing this to provide other alternatives. We're going to have to get a little more creative in the rural areas, and that's what AT&T's been doing. And there's more to be done. I mean, there's no doubt there's still some additional connections that we need to make, but there are options out there. We're aware of it, and we're working on it.
And Tyler, I know this is critically important to you and your association as well.
Yes, it is. And I will say progress is being made. I mean, we, our member company, we serve these areas that are high cost areas. And what's left to connect, I've had members who tell me it's not just high cost areas. These are the highest or higher cost areas of the state that are left to serve. And so I will say that to Jason's point earlier, and to Stephanie as well, the concept of broadband now, it's deemed as a necessity. I will say that the current FCC administration has really tried to focus on bridging what's called the digital divide. And, we know that there are programs out there at the federal level that work. And so as new federal dollars are made available, I think all of us can say that, we need to focus on continuing to fund these programs that we know that are successful, that work. Our companies receive traditional support through the Universal Service Fund. Now, the future of that fund and the mechanisms with which contributions need to be made to that fund in the future will probably need to be addressed at some point. We're dealing with funding it in a more of an antiquated manner across phone lines when broadband connections are increasing. So that'll be a conversation, I know, for a later day. Those funding mechanisms and how that support's going to be maintained in the future will be critical to the future of universal service support and serving these high cost areas. I will say though, the USDA has been very successful in implementing the Reconnect program and eConnectivity program. These funds have come through omnibus bills in Congress where they have actually set aside either grant or grant loan combos. And our member companies aren't just sitting back and saying, please give us more federal dollars from USF, and that's all we're going to do. We're aggressively pursuing grant opportunities. Like I said, I've had 3 companies here just this past year that were awarded grants from USDA. So those projects will be continue to be built out over the next 5 years to completion. And so, there are opportunities there for us to continue to increase broadband access in rural areas. And so I think that those programs are proven. Again, federal funding is going to be important. And to Jason's point earlier, I think Kentucky now, the focus of our policymakers needs to be to continue to be aggressive and do what other states have done. Flattery, what do they say? Imitation is the sincerest form of flattery.
Right.
Some of these broadband grant programs in other states work. And so now that we have the mechanism in place, it'll be incumbent upon us as lobbyists and those who represent these companies to go to the legislature and say, hey, this needs to be a priority. House Bill 362 did actually establish the program, and now we need to secure funding. Other states have done this very well. Minnesota, Tennessee, New York have all implemented very robust state broadband grant programs, and I think Kentucky can follow suit.
And Tyler, just a real quick follow-up from a layman's standpoint. So Kentucky does not have a mechanism right now where the state kicks in to help expand broadband. Am I stating that correctly or not?
Correct. Right now, Kentucky, I say if you look at all of our neighboring states, I said this a lot during the last legislative session, we're the hole in the donut. So all of our surrounding states offer some type of either a broadband grant program or a sales tax exemption or some kind of broadband incentive program to where companies can apply and actually receive funds. Now, most of those programs have matching contributions like our state would, but you're correct. Right now, Kentucky has no mechanism.
Gotcha. Perfect. Thanks. Okay. So in thinking about broadband and technology, one of the first things that's come to mind, and we've already mentioned it so far, schools and specifically students. I want to ask each of you how you're serving schools. And Hollie, let me go ahead and start with you. I know that you guys work with the Kentucky Department of Education. Let's start with you. And what examples can you tell us about that AT&T is doing to help serve schools?
Sure. The school system has been a customer of AT&T for many years, and we work closely with the schools to provide them the internet connectivity that they need. Of course, with this pandemic, the issue is no longer in the school building. The issue is for the students who are trying to learn from home. So AT&T has been looking at that. One of the ways to address that, Jason mentioned earlier, we all have programs specifically to help those who can't afford the internet. So if a student is at home trying to do their learning at home, they can use our access program to get access to the internet for $10 a month with no installation cost or none of the extra fees. And if you're a SNAP recipient or the kids who get free school lunches, any of those kids can qualify, their home can qualify to get that. So again, as Jason brought up earlier, it's really 2 issues. One is the connectivity, but also the ability for those customers to afford that service in their home so that they can access the NTI. We've also worked with some Wi-Fi connectivity by having Wi-Fi hotspots that the schools could purchase at a ridiculously low fee to try to get those hotspots out to the kids so that they could connect. Some folks are putting Wi-Fi hotspots in their areas. People are literally driving up into their parking lots of their schools to try to get their connectivity so that they can get their schoolwork done. But we continue to provide availability in any way we can. AT&T at the national level has also been giving some money to work with different organizations that help teachers with their NTI learning. There's a savings to schools to support e-learning for students that enables virtual classrooms from across America. We're also underwriting an SETDA e-learning coalition. That's a resource center, and I have to read the name of it. It's Educational Technology Directors Association. They've made available to all educators in schools across the United States that platform to access other things. So we're continuing to work with schools just as all the other providers are.
And Hollie, one just follow up for you, and I know you guys don't do this, but in places where there is the connectivity, there are a lot of students that don't have the option of having that Chromebook or whatever to take advantage of the connectivity.
Right. That's right. It's the equipment as well. Yes, and they need ways to provide that equipment. It's a matter of what they can afford. And one of the things that we find is a lot of families are using their cell phones as their primary access to the internet. And so we're working with a lot of wireless solutions that will allow them to do that. Because of our FirstNet product, we're putting towers in some very rural areas, and those will be helpful for that purpose as well. It serves two purposes.
Absolutely. Tyler, how about you?
Yes, to reiterate some of my previous comments, we're still working with elected officials and school superintendents. I've had our managers and CEOs of several of our companies call and say that, they're meeting with those officials now to talk about what distance learning is going to look like for the new school year. Again, a majority of our members are putting up, a number of additional hotspots in those areas for those folks that may not have access. And then to the equipment question, I know that there's a lot of consideration right now in Congress for an additional stimulus package about reopening schools. And so some of that money that and what you would just address with equipment, there's considerations underway right now, I think, for how to use some of that funding, obviously, to help reopen schools and purchase equipment in areas that they don't have access. So that's obviously something that, I think all of our companies would be in favor of. And, it's just a very, to flip the switch and go immediately to distance learning, it is certainly a challenge. And so we're trying to address that with our local officials, again, as quickly and expediently as possible. But like I said, from the early days of the pandemic, we've done things in terms of offering, different kinds of plans that, would make it more accessible. But again, doing things like installing, a number of additional hotspots within, service territories and things like that. So we're trying to do what we can as, these needs, become known to us from, school officials and students in the area.
Stephanie?
Yes, thank you. Our enterprise division in Windstream works with schools and universities to determine their needs, if they need increased bandwidth, if they need, whatever they need. So we do have a division that works primarily with schools and universities. We have a promotion that we're doing for people to get ready to go back to school, and it's a free install for teachers and students, which I hope that people will take us up on that. Around the country, we're seeing that some of the communities that we work with are using their CARES money for broadband deployment in communities, schools, things like that. Kentucky doesn't seem like, they are allocating the CARES money in different ways, but some states are using that money for broadband deployment. And just one more thing, we do have some products that are geared towards schools and universities to help distance learning. Our office suite products features break rooms and And so it's a product that helps teachers, with the breakout rooms, with video learning. So, we're doing some things to help schools, and I know it's a very difficult time for people and educators.
Sure. Jason, how about you?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. So one of the things I mentioned earlier, our Spectrum Internet Assist, which is our low-cost broadband product that is a direct-to-consumer product, right? Somebody would call us up if you're a family with a child on free or reduced lunch, or a senior on supplemental security income. That would be available to them. But one of the things that we've started as a result of the pandemic is what we call our Stay Connected program. And this is where we're working directly with school districts across Kentucky and across the United States in trying to connect not just the school itself, but the individuals, those kids who attend school and may be doing NTI at home. So how this works is the school district actually becomes our customer, but we take our broadband and put it into a home of a child who may not have access otherwise. So we're working with a number of school districts on that, and they're utilizing some CARES money and other means to try to ensure that kids in those schools who may not have access are able to still participate in the learning experience. So that's through our Stay Connected program. One thing you also mentioned, Dave, is computers, and we've worked with a number of nonprofits in Kentucky that are working to try to ensure a device is in the hands of every child. But one of the things I think is also overlooked is ensuring that folks not just have the device, but that they have the skills to utilize the device
Sure.
and the network. And I think this is certainly the case. We talk a lot about learning, but I think we need to also remember our seniors and older adults who are also at home and need to connect. And this is one of the things that programs like the Louisville Urban League's Seniors Digital Literacy Program that we're proud to help with is working to address, ensuring that seniors have the understanding, the knowledge base to use that computer that they may have and that internet connection that we're trying to provide to them. So it's really a three-prong, ensuring that there's infrastructure access, that somebody has the device to access that infrastructure, and then the knowledge and skills to utilize it and utilize it effectively.
And Jason, just one quick follow-up. We're a blessed country. I mean, we're a blessed state, and a lot of us probably don't realize, and we've probably been exposed to it again, the number of schools and teachers that are volunteering on their own to pack lunches and to get them to kids, because if those kids don't go to school, they don't eat. And we've got the same problem that you just addressed in terms of the devices and in some cases the connectivity.
It's absolutely the case. We have a number of programs, as well we should, across Kentucky and the United States that address things like food insecurity, that address folks who may not be able to pay their heating bill or the air conditioning bill or the water bill, right? There aren't the same types of programs that are geared towards ensuring internet access. And I think that's something that as we move forward, the federal government, I know, is looking at that issue, the state and some localities may be looking at that issue as well. But looking and ensuring that if a child or a senior may not have access to the infrastructure that's already available to them, that we figure out a means to do that. And whether that is utilizing a product that we provide, that AT&T provides, or some other network provider offers. I think that's critical. Because as you mentioned, we have to make sure that our children have food, have shelter, but now we have to make sure in today's world that they also have connectivity.
That's a great point. Let's see, Stephanie, let me ask you one. We're working at home now, and we have got our business's proprietary information flying around on the same computer that we're ordering from Amazon on, and our kids are dialing up Netflix on. Talk to me a little bit about the security challenges in this remote working world now.
Well, you're right. This is a huge focus. And, you know, I was reading an article in Security Magazine the other day, and it was talking about how 56% of employees are working from home on their home computers. And 49% of those had never worked from home before. So this presents a tremendous issue for companies. You know, so IT companies have had to scramble and to respond to this to help businesses identify their cybersecurity issues. You know, because this it's not only company information at risk, but it's the security of the network. And, you know, when you're working from home, your virus protection may not be up to date. You may not even have any. You know, so there's a lot of issues that we are seeing during this pandemic. You know, who hasn't heard of Zoom bombing, phishing scams,
Right.
data breaches? You know, all that has been put to the forefront during the pandemic. So, you know, we recommend at Windstream that businesses have a multifaceted approach to cybersecurity. That includes cloud security, virtual private network sign-ins, login verifications, and virtual and premise firewalls. You know, a virtual and a premise firewall is like a moat that goes to the company and it keeps the bad guys out. So at Windstream, we've developed a full suite of business products that help customers with their cybersecurity issues and prevent data breaches. We have a security operations control center that has 55 security engineers. That's all they do all day long, 24 hours a day, is help customers with their cybersecurity issues, with data breaches, with questions, and helping businesses to prevent these. We have a professional services division, and it has white hat hackers. Now, I don't know if you know what this is, but you have those guys on your side. So these are professional hackers that go into companies to try to expose security holes or potential breach, you know, issues. And so we have those on staff that help businesses. They actually go in, try to hack into systems, whether it's through the system itself or employees, trying to get them to open, you know, emails, download attachments, things like that. Employees granting access to systems is a major part of how cybersecurity and how the people are able to get into networks and data breaches. So, you know, cybersecurity and it's a big deal. And that is actually the fastest growing segment of our business is cybersecurity and how to keep businesses' data safe.
Wow, that's interesting. I want to make sure, and I would be remiss if on a get-together like this, I did not talk about policy and how it impacts your industry. When we talk about broadband, we're talking in part about infrastructure. Obviously, we've heard here today that requires an investment, which can be very different depending on where you're making that investment. It can certainly be higher and is in the rural areas. Tyler, I'll start with you. Do you think expanded access should be a priority for Congress? And what other federal programs are there to support your industry?
Well, I think that, and if anything comes out of this as we reflect on the pandemic, it certainly highlighted the need and the additional need for broadband connectivity. I think in the 21st century digital economy, urban and rural areas alike, you know, it's no longer considered a want. It is a necessity to have connectivity and broadband connectivity. And so, yes, I think to say that it's a priority and should be a priority and remain a priority for Congress without a doubt. I mean, I think that you're seeing a focus now, you know, again, historically, when people talked about infrastructure, it had always been about water, wastewater, bridges.
Right.
And so now I think that the information superhighway is considered an essential part of infrastructure. So I do think it's a priority for Congress. It will remain a priority for Congress. As I alluded to earlier, I think you've seen a focus from the FCC about bridging the digital divide. So there are, like I said, existing programs. We've talked about what's happened through USDA with the reconnectivity, the e-connectivity program, the Reconnect program. They've also implemented others. There's Community Connect grants where you can build out and wire and bring fiber to critical community facilities and areas. So there are existing programs. There's going to be potential opportunity for broadband providers in Kentucky through the Rural Digital Opportunity Fund. The FCC is moving forward with a reverse auction that will allow broadband providers throughout the state to bid to serve on unserved census blocks in the state. It's in a period right now where companies have they may have applied to participate, but we don't know who all is going to be participating in that. But that's what I'm saying. There are going to be additional opportunities for broadband providers to bring access to rural areas. And so I think that, there have been existing infrastructure bills that have been filed in the previous Congress. Chairman Pallone had, filed the Lift America Act, which would have allocated, $40 billion to rural broadband. So, there are focus there. Broadband mapping is certainly an issue. We want to know where areas are truly unserved. So bills like the Broadband Data Act that passed Congress are going to be crucial to knowing where those unserved areas are. So we need more granular data as broadband providers to know how to reach those folks that are truly unserved. So there are a lot of federal bills that are in the pipeline right now. And I do think that it will continue to be a priority for Congress moving forward.
Jason, what specific things can we do to better serve rural Kentucky?
Dave, I think, as mentioned, the state made a good start when the state broadband grant program was established earlier this year. That funding for that is, I think, a critical next step. As Tyler indicated, we're seeing other states have a lot of success with those types of grant programs in expanding service to areas where there's truly a need. One of the, in the chat box, one of the individuals asked about pole attachments. And I can't stress enough our company's perspective that ensuring that we have a ability to connect to poles. And I know this is sort of not the subject that a lot of people think of when they think of the internet.
Baseball subject.
No, that's right. It's a little often right field. But when you think about a rural road and you're driving down, you'll see pole after pole after pole of utility poles along the side of the road. And that's how broadband providers like us expand service into rural areas. So the ability to attach our infrastructure to those poles in a cost-effective, efficient, timely way is absolutely critical to us. And, I think some folks that have paid attention to the broadband debate have heard of the term one-touch make ready. I think we think that there are a number of good aspects of that policy that could be implemented. I think we would take a slightly different approach and call it a right touch make ready, and something that we've seen the city of Louisville implement and in other places as well. But I think looking at addressing those types of issues, how we're able to access that infrastructure is critical for us, because that can cost up to 1/3 of all of the construction costs of a project in rural areas. So ensuring that we're able to do that in an efficient manner is exceptionally important. I think we're going to be hearing a lot more about that in the coming months.
Again, this is layman guy. Is it a big deal to attach to a pole?
It can be.
Depending on who owns the pole?
It depends on who owns the pole. And actually, I'm surrounded on this call by other pole owners. So I have to be careful what I say, Dave, right? So we don't generally own those poles. Those poles are generally owned by electric companies and the incumbent phone companies. that it does take a permitting process. There are different rules depending on the company, different costs depending on the type of company that we're attaching to. So those are some of the things that I think are important for a company like ours as we look at the rural broadband issue.
Sure. Holly?
Another thing that comes to mind, I echo everything that all of these folks are saying, particularly the Data Act and trying to map out what is an unserved area. But another thing that comes to mind is at the local level even, we're working right now with small cell installations. And while those are wireless related, it's a wireless product related thing, it still provides internet to a lot of folks in Kentucky. And in Kentucky, the rules on small cell deployment vary from county to county and city to city. And some places we've had no problem at all, and other places it's been difficult. So even at the local level, if we can get people to embrace and make it as efficient as possible for us to deploy the technology that we need to deploy, that's going to help Kentucky a lot. At the federal level, one of the things that AT&T, it's been mentioned earlier, I think Jason was talking about things that would be helpful to allow the customer to pay for our products. At the federal level, AT&T has proposed some form of card similar to SNAP, or some sort of benefit similar to SNAP, so that a customer who cannot afford the service can find a way to pay for the service, which then helps the providers to be able to afford what they need to do to provide the infrastructure. So we're working from the federal level to the state level to the local level. We're working with all those folks to look for solutions because we're going to have some creative solutions to get this done.
Okay. Kate, I know we're nearing the top of the hour. I've got like one or two more questions if you'd like me to proceed. And if there are questions that we have time for that you want to pass along to me, but I will wait for your word. But let me go ahead and ask one more. Are there silver linings in this pandemic? Are there things that you and your companies have had to do that have maybe been sped up by this, or things you've taken a look at, or maybe people outside your industry have taken a look at things you've been talking to them about for a while? Stephanie, let me start with you.
Thank you. Well, this pandemic has highlighted, has been good, I think, for society in general to stay connected with one another and how important it is. And I think all the broadband providers play a role in that by helping people to stay connected. And as a company, it's helped us identify some needs that some things that we need to do. Like I said, we put in $153 million into our system, and we're going to put more in. So, we want to be a community partner, and we just want to, continue to work with communities.
Holly?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I think has become more common during the pandemic that's going to stick is telehealth. I think we've seen a lot going on with that. AT&T gave $50,000 to UK Health to provide some EICU units where they're using specific cameras that would allow them to monitor beds from a distance. I think people are using their connectivity to see their doctors. It's more convenient and it's safer. You're not exposed to as many things. So I think the silver lining is that we're, as customers and as day-to-day lay people, we're getting used to using this technology in new ways and getting more comfortable with it. So I think that's been beneficial for everybody.
I think that's a great point, and you don't realize it, but one of my best friends was a doctor in Lexington who contracted COVID and got one of those transfusions and made it out after 19 days on a ventilator, and then having my oldest work in the ICU. It's not just something for consumers who aren't comfortable with what's going in, but it's certainly something that's critical for those frontline workers as well. Tyler?
Yeah, I certainly silver lining in terms of a policy perspective. I really do believe that we need to do, our leaders, I think, have understood the focus that needs to take place now in terms of highlighting where the gaps may be in funding. So from a state policy perspective, I certainly think that will be something that we can look forward to and probably advocate for in the coming months as we head into the next session. As Jason alluded to, I certainly believe that funding a bill, now that we have a mechanism in place, doing a state broadband grant program and funding House Bill 362 will be very important for the state moving forward, because we've identified now that, where some of these areas are in the state. And I think leaders are being more aware of where some of these gaps are in connectivity. It's just going to make the funding piece even more crucial. So I certainly do believe that it's going to be important for us to focus on that in the future. So I do think as a means of finding a silver lining, I think the importance that this is placed on policy and moving forward on the need for true broadband funding for these future-proof networks that can meet the needs of students and stay-at-home parents who are teleworking. That's probably one of the biggest silver linings that's come out of this.
Absolutely. Jason, we'll give you the last word.
I would echo a lot of what Tyler just indicated. We can't take a scattershot approach to broadband and accessibility in Kentucky anymore. We've tried that. It hasn't worked. And I think the pandemic has sharpened our focus in terms of how we need to deploy resources to ensure that people are connected. In urban areas, we have to make sure that if a child doesn't have the means of getting online, that we figure out a way of making sure that happens. In rural areas, we have to look at where those homes and businesses that don't have broadband service. And we have to look at true public-private partnerships to target those homes and businesses to ensure that they have access. So I think this pandemic has definitely sharpened that focus from a policy perspective to make sure that we are addressing the true needs related to broadband access, connectivity, and digital inclusion, and that we're not trying to do a little bit of everything that ends up costing the state a lot of money and ends up not getting broadband anywhere.
A great discussion, guys. And for those of you who joined us today, if you want to let folks know about it, it's not just something that the inside baseball people need to hear. I mean, this is something that affects every Kentucky family in every corner of the Commonwealth. So Jason Keller from Charter and Hollie Spade from AT&T Kentucky, Tyler Campbell from the Kentucky Telecom Association, and Stephanie Bell from Windstream. Thank you each and every one. Thanks for what you're doing for families and for students and businesses in Kentucky. To all of you who are out there on the call, thank you for what you're doing for employees like me, and Kate, to the Chamber, for what you guys do every day for the Commonwealth. We appreciate it. So we'll kick it back to you to wrap it up.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Great discussion today. We really appreciate you all taking the time to join us, and to all of our participants. As I said, we have recorded this and we will be posting it on our website later today, so you can check it out. And you can join us back on Friday morning, this coming Friday at 10 a.m. We have several officials from the Cabinet for Health and Family Services, local health departments, talking about kind of where we stand today on the pandemic, as well as contact tracing, what businesses need to know going forward. And so you'll see some familiar faces from the governor's daily press conferences on that webinar Friday morning at 10. So be sure to get registered for that. You can find more information on our social media pages as well. So thank you again to everyone for joining us, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.